Hi and welcome to Harbour from Harbour Housing. Here on our podcast, we and others talk about real stories with real people. If you're not familiar with Harbour Housing, we are a non-profit charity whose mission is to play a part in doing everything we can to ensure, although we can't eradicate homelessness, but we can make the journey better. Today, special guest will be talking to us about his journey through homelessness and what he has done to overcome his mental health and addictions. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe for future episodes.
My name's Courtney. I'm the assistant team lead for our cold web division.
I'm Malcolm Putko. I'm the operations director for the Harbour Group.
And I'm Kev. I'm the guest today, Kev Mud. I'm an award-winning comedian, the UK pun champion at the moment, and ex-homeless guy, ex-addict, live in a caravan up in Porthcawen on the north coast. Yeah, that's me.
Big caravan?
It's little caravan, big man. Yeah.
Snug.
Yeah. Post myself in. Yeah. I like living in a caravan. It's nice. You end up seeing, feeling the weather and stuff. See the solar system every time I go for a wee. That's nice.
Do you know, it's funny you should say that. We were offered 4 caravans from a holiday park where they were putting staff in.
Yeah.
And we sort of looked at it and thought, actually, it'd be quite a good project for some of their clients to sort of do them up. And when it's cold weather provision, rather than sort of having to sleep, because we have a cold weather provision, we also have what's known as SWEP, which is sort of severe weather.
Yeah.
I mean, that's activated. It's more of a dormitory type sort of things. It's not ideal for anybody.
No.
We thought, if we had these caravans dotted all over the place, we just say to somebody, there's a caravan there, just help yourself to it, you know.
Yeah, I do like it. Get left alone as well, which is quite nice. But yeah, that's me. Yeah.
When did your career in comedy start?
So I was living in my caravan, and I had been drinking to a really bad amount for quite some time. And when COVID happened and COVID hit, I didn't drink. I had 1 bottle of Beck's, which was really weird. The urge went away, and I realised that I must have social anxiety or something like that. But I remember watching Parkinson when I was younger. George Best was on there. He said he didn't realise he was an alcoholic till he came back sober one day. Like, you need the contrast. And I started to realise just how much of a problem I had with drinking drugs. And I'd stopped drinking, stopped doing drugs and stuff, and I locked myself in my caravan, went a bit mad. I started writing all over the ceiling and stuff, and all over the walls, and all this stuff was coming out, loads of numbers. I've got my diagnosis. I'm a big numbers guy. But then these words came out, a bit of a poem. This strolling woodland baronet, the hedgerow his bedside, he clocks out to the red sunset, then clocks in with the tide. Just about me walking around all the time. And I thought, that's quite nice. So I started writing poems, and then my doctor and social prescriber told me I need to go and perform them. So I went to perform these poems, and I was absolutely cacking myself in Newquay. I hadn't performed in public and stuff before. And then people laughed at all the stuff I was doing in the middle, just blabbering, like getting all nervous, and people laughing at it. And then I went to a comedy night in the audience in Newquay. Some comedian didn't turn up, and people were like, does anyone want to get up? And a load of people were like, who's funny? I'm like, nah, bugger off. But I went up there and I had one joke, I made it last 5 minutes. And then I did really well. Someone invited me to another gig in Falmouth. And then about 4 months later, after entering into a competition, I was in the final of British Comedian of the Year at the Comedy Store in Covent Garden, which is weird because that's where I was homeless, in Covent Garden for a section. So I used to get told off for begging in that queue. And then all of a sudden I was inside there, and a few months later I'm professional. So it's been a bit mad really. But it was never the plan. And I've still not said I want to do it, but I'm just kind of doing it. It's a lovely thing. It's a nice way of spending your time, and I like the fact that it's all encompassing. It gives me purpose all of the time. So even when I'm not working, I'll sit down and I'll write. And I used to be someone who was fairly angry. I never lashed out at anyone. It was all against the self and stuff, but I spend a lot of time now writing jokes and thinking of funny ways to express certain things, and it's helped my communication a lot, which has opened everything up. So there's a lot of that all going on, and all of a sudden find myself being a comedian out of nowhere. It was a bit mad, really. Yeah.
You must be good at it.
Yeah, well, apparently so. Yeah. I had a bit of luck as well because I've worked in the comedy industry for a little while as a sound tech. That was by accident as well. A weird little thing. I was homeless in Leicester, drinking cider on a roof of a block of flats. I didn't live in it, obviously, but I knew the way up there, and I went to see the sunrise early in the morning, and I was up there, took some people up there, and this guy came out and complained because he was living in the top flat and I was keeping him awake. And I was, oh, sorry, and a few weeks later he bumped into me and misremembered who I was. He was like, are you that sound tech for the comedy festival? And I went, yeah, I've changed my number. And I gave him my number, and then I became a sound tech for Leicester, and then I worked backstage for Glastonbury as well, like on the comedy stage and things there, and I worked. Yeah, so it's been a little bit helpful because they say it's not what you know, it's who you know, and I've for once got a mixture of things because I didn't really know anyone who did anything in any industry I was doing, but all of a sudden I've landed in this, and I've got a few connections. I'm not going to lie, it's not all been me being good, it's also been me being sly, but yeah.
So you've been quite transient. You said you've been at Leicester and Covent Garden, etc.
Yeah.
What dragged you to that? Was it locations, or was it just getting out of Dodge?
So Leicester, I was in uni there,
and
then things kind of went wrong with my mental health. And London, it was me running away. Also, my best mate growing up was homeless in London, so I went to see him when it happened to me. But the first day I got there was the first day of the riots. So I was actually at the riots while I was there, and I wasn't taking part in them, but I was, free entertainment. Yeah. I was watching it. It was crazy, and I ended up in some mad places. I ended up at the protest camp outside Parliament Square in the House of Parliament. Slept there for a good while, and I've been all over really. Like one of the things I say, one of the little things I say on stage is the only good thing about being homeless is you can be homeless anywhere. Like, I don't know why anyone's homeless in Plymouth, Like, walk, do you know what I mean? I like Plymouth really, but
what about Cirencester? No.
Yeah, not Cirencester. Yeah, horrible. But so I ended up. That's how I kind of ended up down here. I'm not Cornish. It was like a mixture of going to like Glastonbury and being like, well, if I'm going to be on, ain't got nowhere to live, I might as well come down here. We used to find derelict caravans and live in them and get jobs in pubs and stuff. And then it'd get really cold and I'd flee back up country again. But yeah, always been around, seen a lot of weird things, been part of a lot of weird stuff, lived in squats and lots of very strange things going on. But yeah, probably even stranger now, just live on the cliffs in between two lovely beaches. I don't know how I've managed it, but yeah, I've ended up in paradise somehow.
Got a good view to wake up to.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, so it's an interesting place really. Like, it's given me everything, that place, because again, little trigger warning, I will be talking about like suicide and stuff, but I had a lot of attempts when I was younger, and that's how I ended up being because I was a suicide worker for Pentree for the homeless, suicide and addiction. And as much as it sounds weird to people that haven't gone through all of that, I always think that when you've had that, it's like it's the same as being homeless. Once it's happened to you, it's always happened. Like when you bend a spoon, if you bend it back, there's always that little nib. So I've always, once you've made that journey and gone past the fear and what's going on in my head and all that sort of stuff, and you managed to get there, I've always got a short cut to there that other people wouldn't necessarily have, because I've gone through all of that. I'm good and I don't think in that way anymore, but when I first moved here I wasn't all that great, and I had a bit of relief with the fact that it was near the cliffs. I wasn't planning on anything, but I knew that I had my exit if I needed it, because sometimes things got unbearable. So I actually went to find the cliff just so I knew if I needed to which one it'd be, and I found it at the end of my field, and I went down to have a look at it from the bottom, because I just found this goat track, and when I went down there I found this secret rock pool with a waterfall going into it and starfish everywhere, and it really changed my perspective on things, because all of a sudden I had not just my caravan but I had this place as well, and it made me realise that no matter all the bad things that had been happening, all the bad thoughts I had throughout World War One and Two, every kiss, every hug, every death, everything throughout the whole human race, got these places that are just doing the same thing, completely unbothered by it. Water falling into this rock pool, slowly filling up and spilling out into the sea. And it gave me kind of a sense of perspective. So, you don't really get that in a house in Leicester.
No, you don't.
But yeah, that's how I became a comic. All of a sudden I'm now, doing it full time.
What was your experiences with homelessness?
So I had things going on that were, I mean, I've mentioned the suicide thing. The big thing at the start was I left loads of suicide notes out on my first attempt. And this is genuinely true. I picked a train to walk in front of weeks in advance. It became very calm. No one picked up on it. Obviously, that's a warning sign. Real distress. And all of a sudden, I was calm, and I had my plan. And I left them by loads of mates' houses, hid them in my family and stuff. And then I had a master one that I put down in my mum and dad's in my room. And then I went, texted my girlfriend at that point, who was in Portsmouth. This is in Peterborough. And I walked all the way there for an hour and a half. I had the playlist and everything sorted, but I messed the playlist up. It wasn't long enough, so I had to keep listening to Sonny and Cher. I got You Babe again and again and again at the end. I walked all the way to the train station, finally got there, saw it in front of me, thought I'm here, turned right to the train station, and when I got there, it was a replacement bus. Yeah.
They're not as good.
Genuinely true.
They're not as good.
And you can't lay down in front of that, like it's not really the thing. So all of a sudden I realised I wasn't going to do that. I couldn't, and I sat outside and having a cigarette, and there was this guy there, and he was talking about the fact his boyfriend, he fell asleep on the train and woke up in Peterborough, poor bugger, so he was talking about his boyfriend with so much love and connection and stuff, and I realised that's kind of what I was missing. I started doubting stuff, so I went to play snooker across the road in this 24-hour pool and snooker club that I knew. Luckily I knew them because I didn't have any money, because suicidal, not great at saving. So I went in there. I went outside for a cigarette and saw this policeman, and I went over to him to tell him what to do, because I knew everyone had found the notes at this point. Didn't want to turn my phone on. And instead of helping me, the police fined me £75 and charged me with misuse of communications under the Communication Act. And I got a record, which meant, and then when they took me back to mum and dad's, they forced me to call my crying grandparents in front of them. So I completely shut off any communication, got no help whatsoever, so I ran away.
What age was this, if you don't mind asking?
18, 19.
That's a young age.
Yeah. I was going to be a vicar when I was young, and at this point I'd just lost my religion, so everything was mad. And I'd found drink and drugs, which was something that was helping me with all these experiences. But I used to run away a lot, and I think it's different experience for me than it is for other people. I'm a big, hairy guy. I'm actually like both a pacifist, a teddy bear, and a coward. So I wouldn't actually do anything to anyone. But I know that I feel a lot. I feel a lot safer than other people do on the street sometimes. And as much as it wasn't a comfortable place, it became somewhere that I would run away to, so people wouldn't know where I was, and I'd just flee and run away and end up, like somewhere without any responsibilities and things like that, and around people that kind of understood me and people that really interested me. It got a bit fascinating, really. Like, I used to make money from drawing on Trafalgar Square, but I couldn't draw. Someone had taught me, you just draw a box on the floor, put your hat down and look at it like you're going to draw something, and there's so many people that put money in your hat anyway. And so I had all these other weird little things happening, but I started noticing loads of stuff going on, started noticing all these weird things, things that I hadn't noticed about homeless people, like things that still keep with me to this day. Like if you want to save someone who's newly homeless, you've got about 2 weeks, I'd say, because the first time that you're sitting outside the bins drinking, it's really shameful, when you're wondering what's going on with your life, and you start, there's panic and everything involved. And the second time you do it, it's Tuesday. And it starts being normalised and things, and it becomes harder for you to kind of find the motivation to tackle it, because not that it's a comfortable place to be, but you find these weird little things going on. And I had another guy who came and saved me at one point. I was in a real bad situation, sleeping outside, freezing, and this old guy came and woke me up, and he was like a little god to me, because he was showing me all these places you could get free food and drink. And all these nice people who work in different shops introduced me to him as little lifelines, and he was being really kind to me. Really told me to keep off the drink at this point, which was I managed to do to help me not sink down. And he was this lovely man who cared about everyone. And then when I spoke to him about how he became homeless, he told me it was because he kept on hitting women, which blew my mind, because this was a lovely man at this point. And he said that when he gets into a house, it wasn't that he was aiming at women. It was he'd be in a relationship, it'd be the closest person to him, and he'd just lose touch with reality, and the only way he can keep himself above water is by getting rid of his responsibilities and going homeless. And I thought to myself then, well, what do you do with people like that? Like, how do you help those people? Because they don't just need a house, they need all this other stuff, and it's not there. So I had this, it was a crazy experience, because it was like, it was like a study, as well as like a point of study really, as well as, you know, an experience for myself. And weird that I felt safer on the streets than I did around people that loved me and cared for me really. But yeah, it's been all very strange. I was talking to someone last night actually about how different it is for a lot of people. People talk about homelessness as if it's like one thing, but it's just as varied as what we call dwellers, people in houses. You know, it can be just as varied. And I knew all the way through that I had people that loved me and had somewhere to go. I just couldn't bring myself to be part of all of that, and you know, I had a big struggle. So there's parts of homelessness that I wouldn't ever be able to relate to, because the thought of this is forever and there's no way out isn't something that I had. So yeah, it's been interesting then moving into my job and speaking to other people who have experienced it in many different ways, many different forms. Yeah.
When because obviously you was homeless from such a young age,
Yeah.
did you have any support from like local agencies or outreach support to kind of help you with getting into housing, or
There was
just a bit of advice and guidance?
There was in certain areas, like when I was in London, there was a lot. So Shelter did some really good stuff in Crisis.
Yeah.
Crisis were actually really sneaky, because they offered me counselling and I said I didn't want any, because, you know, like, I'm a bloke, I don't want to talk about my feelings. So, but then they offered me piano lessons and like lessons on how to fix bikes and stuff. There was all this stuff going on. So I took this piano lesson. It was after about 3 weeks I realised the piano teacher was a counsellor. I'm like, you bastards. So in true, like, can't talk about it emotionally man style, I didn't go to piano lessons anymore. So I quit both of them. But yeah, they were all right. They were there. There was a few weird things really, where in London it's all split into boroughs, and if you're not seen by one of the street workers, like between this time and this, like, you had to be seen over a set period of time within the same borough. You couldn't like be signed on to stuff. And I used to move around a lot, so I'd be really annoyed because some of my friends would go off like play football with someone that was with like a group activity, like outreach work, and I'd be with them, but I wouldn't be allowed to go. And I didn't have access to some of the showers and things and stuff, so I had to walk to a place called Whitechapel Mission in London, which was like rough. It was lovely, but it was rough. Like you'd have like showers with no big football showers. You'd all be like kind of naked in there at the same time. It closed at like 9 a.m, so I'd have to get there for 7. I was living in Parliament Square at the moment, so that's like an hour and a bit walk. So I was absolutely knackered when I got there. There's some poetic things, like I had to walk through the banking district, and genuinely there was a nicer environment in the shelter than there was in the banking area. There was no one smiling in the banking area, whereas when you get to the homeless place, there was like 20p for a full breakfast and stuff, and yeah, like that there's help there, but not really from other places, you know, like I wouldn't get it from elsewhere. Like when I was I found it a lot on my own, so I would find like squats and things to be in, and they were all kind of helpful. Like it was about being around people that I could relate to a lot of the time. Like I love services, and I know that you guys do good work, and you know I've seen it with Pentrief as well. But my experience of it a lot of the time was there was things that was really horrible. Like I had to keep on repeating my stories and my traumas and stuff at the time when it wasn't healthy for me, and it seemed to get absolutely nowhere. And you know, whereas when I was all of a sudden in like a cooperative, like a group of like homeless people, and we took a place and you know squatted somewhere, there was that just felt like more support at that point. But I think that's just, you know, perception of the situation at the time. Now I've worked in the industry, I kind of know as well, like, yeah, people are busy. But when I was working at Pentrief, I'd have like a list of 35, 40 people I need to see in a week.
No, I bet.
Around Cornwall, and it's like, can't do it.
Not enough time in the day.
Not enough time in the day. And it doesn't mean I don't care about the person, it's just, it's hard.
What do you think is something that could change, a positive change within the homeless community? Like, as someone who's experienced, what's one thing that could completely... I know you didn't obviously have a different experience to others, but what's one thing that could have changed that would have just helped out a little bit easier?
Well, there's something I can see from having worked here, and that is if you're registered as homeless, you should have a free bus pass, because that's absolutely insane that you got people having to get to GP appointments and things and go all from A to B, and it's like you're having to, you know, get around. I mean, getting around Cornwall with a car in the summer is a nightmare. It's
hard enough, let alone without anything.
Without anything, you know, it's an absolute nightmare, and we all know the buses are going past us are empty. So you get on. They can get onto that. That'll make a massive difference. And even just being able to see different places, being able to do something with your day. You know, I don't think people understand the fact that, you know, if you're for some reason staying, they always get questioned, why are you staying in St Stephen's? Like, it doesn't matter. That's where they obviously feel safe. You know, I know there's not going to be any resources and things around wherever it is you are. But yeah, that's the problem with Cornwall, because I think the funders at the top don't see enough. They kind of do it by population, and we've got a similar population to like Bristol, but Bristol can walk from one place to another if you need to. That's not possible here. So that's one. Another one, I was in meetings quite a lot as someone with someone who's been through it a lot, lived experience, and I was in meetings with senior people in the NHS and stuff quite a bit, and I used to speak my mind fairly often, which didn't get me many friends, but I would be sitting around and they'd say, what could we do to help the homeless? You know, and they'd be coming up with all these things like, we'll do a new app, we'll do this and that, and I'll just say, has anyone thought of houses? Because yeah, I mean, what homelessness actually is the most visible social element of the wealth disparity, and so, you know, to be able to stop and, you know, homelessness, you need people with a lot of money to be paying tax, up to, you know, like fair levels and stuff. So if I'm going to get technical, it'd be like a better taxation model to be able to fund services and be able to get places for people to actually be able to live, and maybe more taxes and restrictions on Airbnbs. I live near St Merrin, 57% of it's empty. I'd go out and do work with homeless people. It's like there's nowhere for them to live, and I'd go back and be like, there's a few places here. Yeah, exactly. So there's all of those. But I think one of the biggest things is we have an idea that we live in we're constantly told from a young age that we live in a meritocracy. So your efforts equal your success, which I know is not true. Like, I work with very badly paid, like, social workers and nurses and caseworkers and stuff, and I'm not doing them down, but I've got some mates who live, you know, by the beach, you know, in Cornwall and stuff, and they've got hereditary money and you know, do really important things like move some numbers around on the screen, and they've got loads and loads and loads of money and things. Now, I'm not, you know, it is what it is, but I think people need to stop seeing homelessness as something that someone has done to kind of deserve that. If we live in a meritocracy and you say that your effort, the result of your life is down to your efforts, then that also means that if you have a bad life, you're to blame in some way. And I think we need to, like, forget that and realise that life's difficult and the game is rigged.
100%. I think also, when people think of homelessness, they think of someone rough sleeping, when actually you've got people in support accommodations, you've got people in TA, emergency, like, all of that falls under the same umbrella, but people just think if they're not rough sleeping, then they don't have a home. And I think people forget, like, we're all in a position to become homeless within 2 paychecks. If I didn't pay my rent for 2 months, my landlord, I'm sure he wouldn't keep me there if I wasn't paying him. I'm sure he'd kick me out. Like, no one's better than anyone else. What challenges did you kind of overface, and what do you think from, like, homelessness, from, like, charities that are involved within the sector could do to kind of improve the communications within the service?
So the thing that's helped,
if that makes sense.
the thing that helped more than anything, so obviously I got it in 2 ways, with myself having gone through stuff, and and then having worked with other people. The biggest thing that I found helped in every way is purpose. I think we live in a society now where even if you just go back a few decades, like, if you worked in a cheese shop, let's say, and you were just working retail there, you were helping whoever set that up. It, possibly be an independent place, and you had your role within the company. You felt part of this whole thing. Whereas now, a lot of people, I've done it myself, worked in places like Tesco and whatever, and you don't really feel like you've got a part of anything. You feel like if you didn't wake up tomorrow, nothing much had changed. There's no real need to even know what day it is apart from what hours you're working. Like, nothing actually seems to kind of matter. Whereas if you give people purpose and a sense that they actually matter and they've got an ability to be able to help other people, and the fact that they exist and do what they do is a positive thing, then that changes stuff. I had a really weird thing happen to me, which basically I was living with my girlfriend in Leicester. I had my first I was like stable for the first time in a while, and then she went to see her mum back in Lithuania, and then COVID happened and she couldn't come back. And we were already kind of deciding she wanted to live in a city, I wanted to live in a countryside, so we decided that's probably it. And I went and moved in with some random people on Gumtree because she was paying half the rent. And when I moved in, they were smoking crack, and I was like, what's going on? And genuinely, weirdly, every time they smoked crack, they'd watch Poirot. I don't understand what that was, but they'd do it every time. I'd hear the Poirot theme tune, like, oh, here we go. And it was during COVID, so I'm stuck in this bloody room at the side, and I'm trying to deal with, I've had issues, not with it wasn't with crack and stuff, but I'd had issues, with addictions and stuff and neurodiversities, and I was going a bit loopy, as we all were with COVID. And Leicester at this point was the worst place in Europe for COVID, like a massive hotspot, worse than Milan. And I put a rant up on Facebook, which is always a sign of good mental health, about things, and it actually got picked up by The Guardian as an opinion piece, and then they didn't publish it because this other story was coming out, and I started working for The Guardian as an undercover reporter. I found myself in this weird situation where I was all of a sudden a journalist for a national newspaper temporarily, and I helped break a news story about a company called Boohoo Clothing, who were using modern slavery in Leicester, and we got 2 laws recreated. It was on the front of all the tabloids. Got Boris Johnson to talk about his daily briefings, and it took 1.5 billion off their share price. I did that from a crack house, and with the money I got for that, I ran away and bought my caravan. So it was a complete bit of luck.
I was just mind blown.
Yeah. So it was like a mad kind of crazy bit of luck. But that gave me a real feeling of purpose and worth, because all of a sudden it was like, from having no one listen to me, everyone was listening to me. And my name's still on the bottom of the story, like it says, like, additional reporting, Kev Mud at the bottom, which is funny because that's not even my real name, but like they put that on there. All of a sudden I had this kind of, okay, I can, and I think that then led on to the minor confidence to be able to go and do comedy, although I don't think all comedians are actually confident. I think you can break it down. You've got some people who are really confident and think they've got something to say, but 99% of comedians are able to do it because there's nothing that the audience can say or think about them that they've not already said to themselves 3 inches from the mirror, which is kind of where I was. It was like,
what's the worst that could happen?
You're shit. It's like, yeah, I know. Like, I don't really care. I had this, but that was, as much as that's a mad story, if you boil it down, that was me having purpose and a reason. All of a sudden, there was people whose lives were changing because of this. It was a horrible situation. They were ordering people from Goa, the people who had these factories, and they were just putting them in houses of multiple occupancy. They couldn't speak English, and they're paying them £2.50 an hour. And as soon as they accepted the wage, they told them that if they went and told the police, they were in trouble as well, because them accepting it means they've broken the law. And they were tested positive for COVID, just coming into the factories and going back home and just dying. And when they died, they'd order more people in. It was crazy. Just the feeling that I had a hand in helping stop that gave me a buzz and a feeling of that. And I think that's the thing, we need to find purpose for people, and the easiest way of doing that is twofold. It's either through work, but obviously that's a little bit difficult for people that are going through trauma and stuff, and like trauma recovery and things, but community is the big one, a big one. And I think the only way you can do the community thing is by tackling that thing that I said about the meritocracy, about they're not here because of like it being their fault or something. This is a symptom of a badly structured society, and once you start accepting that, I think people will be less worried about helping these people, you know what I mean, and like reaching out and helping them out. You know, it was always used to puzzle me. Like I remember I was trying to write a bit, so I got a bit I do about dogs, like a comedy bit I do about dogs. And I thought about doing a bit about some cats. I was thinking about when I was homeless, and I remember we were really jealous of cats, because when people didn't know a cat, like a strange cat had turned up, they'd let them in their house. But I'm sitting outside, and I'm like, that's an animal. That's like got fur on it. Like it's fine. Yeah. And it got to a situation where people will allow, because there's a distrust. There's no distrust of cats, but there's a distrust of people. I mean, it's like I'm just someone who had been totally let down by services, was feeling lost and sad, and just basically needed a hug, but I couldn't get it from anyone for years. So yeah, hug people and get them involved in little projects and things. I'd say that's the easiest way.
Yeah, perfect.
And a bus pass.
Yes, bus pass for sure.
Yeah.
I know you touched base on it just a little bit then, but what advice would you give to others that are currently homeless or are in TA or anything?
I would say talk to people, talk about things to people. It's a hard one really, because it's such a wide ranging thing. But I would say, instead of feeling like, first thing is realise like what you've got and what you deserve aren't the same thing. That's a big thing. Secondly, that things can change. And thirdly, break your problems down into things. You know, like it feels like an all-encompassing thing because it's completely surrounding you. I mean, the homelessness is horrible because it's like it affects everything. Like everything you do is changed due to homelessness. Like what chair you sit on, and you know, people talking about things on telly that you can't join in with, to finding food and being outside and feeling like it's just constantly always there. And then you've got all these other problems as well, and it just feels like completely never ending. But I think if you can break these things down and do it step by step, that's the thing, to see these as multiple challenges and things that you can overcome in some way. But yeah, and also hang around with the right people. That's really difficult to do. You need to hang around with the right people, because I don't think anyone really truly means harm. Like for people, some people do, but the majority of people really don't. But there's a lot of people who are going through traumatic experiences as well, and if you're bonding over that, it does help sometimes. But if you're both got the same reaction, I'm thinking basically down the route of addiction and things now, you need to be able to leave that. Also, find something fun. A big thing I used to do when I used to work with the clients is, do you know what? I know I'll get argued with it sometimes by the people, by the funders and something, but I'm just going to take you bowling, and we're not going to talk about anything, because all you ever do is talk to that person about how much of a shit situation you're in. That's all you ever do.
And if you go constantly talking about it, it's constantly, we find taking people out for key works normally helps. We normally do a Starbucks, coffee, but like that, just having it in an informal environment where you're not in front of the computer screen and they can just talk freely. I think it takes away the stress and anxiety of it, because they're not thinking, oh, I'm talking to you, and you're literally documenting my whole life story on your system.
Yeah.
And it just, I think it also, they then see you as a human being as well, rather than someone who's like either trying to tell you what to do or telling you not what to do.
I think the sector has to come together as well, with being able to information share a lot easier. Like, why on earth are they saying the same story to you and to Pentrief and to St Petrox and to the NHS and to their doctor? And it's 100%. Just have it written down, like have it already recorded or whatever, like have it done so they can go, okay, these are the things, have them bullet pointed with whatever, and if they want to go over it, they can do. Like that's the thing to that's a big thing to do. I remember like the NHS, obviously they've got their big systems and whatever, but I didn't have access to the NHS system. I was working with the NHS, but I didn't have access to that system. And even the system didn't have stuff on it. Like I'd be with some clients, and then after 2 or 3 meetings, be like, oh, by the way, it's come up on here that they've gone to jail for stabbing a family member like in the neck or whatever, and you just I'd still work with someone, but it'd be handy to know that considering I just met him in the woods, like it'd have been a good thing to have known that this is here. But the information sharing is so terrible within all of the systems and services, and it's down to not the services themselves. Like we all had our hands tied But you need to be able to get these things out and stop people constantly going over their bloody trauma.
Do you find that could be a reason why some people, like, you get people who've been rough sleeping for like years? Do you think that's one of the main reasons why they don't like accessing that support? Because they're having to reopen about all their issues that they've already previously spoke to with Cornwall Council or whoever it would be.
Yeah.
Do you think that could be it? If it was all information sharing, it could probably make a lot easier to access the services.
A lot easier, and a lot of the time as well, it's not just that they've gone and done that, it's that they've had to jump on 3 buses, get up at 7 a.m. and go and do that. And it's like, you could have just emailed Matey Boy and asked him this. Like, why have I got to come over here? Do you know what I mean? Oh, you got to come meet me in St Agnes, you're based in Salt Ash, and all this sort of stuff. It's ridiculous. And the amount of petrol that we're wasting to go and find that information, to go and get someone else, you know, you've got a list of 30 or 40 people I need to go and see. There's a reason I can't see them is because most of the time I'm doing meetings that could have been an email.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going on. That's really silly, a lot of that stuff. And I think a lot of it as well, sometimes it's because we're so busy. I know what it's like, we're all so busy, but knowing what people have got to offer as well. Like when I looked into cruise bereavement, I was talking to someone from there, and when I found that I just thought it was just for bereavement purposes. There's so much other stuff they did, and I found that out about everyone else. You know, there's all these other bits. I think a big thing that's helped out with all of that, to be honest with you, and something that I can see growing as a role, is the social prescribers. I think they're so helpful, just knowing what's going on in the area, especially down here. Again, like if you're in Bristol, you can kind of keep a bit of track as to what's going on where, because you're close to it. But if someone comes to me,
we found it super helpful down in Cornwall.
Yeah, if someone's just like, oh, you know, I'm based in the Lizard or whatever, and it's like, well, I don't have any bloody idea what's going on. You know, I have no idea. I mean, I'm 20 minutes from Newquay. I don't know what's going on there. So, to have a list of social prescribers to be able to access what's going on there. The other one as well is, I think, one of the problems with people not relating to stuff as well. Something that I always found it easy to relate to people with was, firstly, I'd obviously been there. But secondly, I'm a bit of a scruff bag. Like I'm better now than I was. I'm still scruffy, but I was like, I remember turning up a few times, like in the summer. Don't do it now, but for a long time I didn't used to wear shoes. I'd go around barefoot. And they'd be in the car, but I just liked having my feet out and stuff. So I'd have my feet out. You know, I'd have jeans that I'd cut down the bottoms just because it was hot, you know, so I'd take a stunning knife to the bottom of the jeans, and I'm still quite feral, you know, big beard, have a fag in my mouth and whatever. And that actually kind of disarmed them sometimes, because a lot of the time it's people in suits and stuff that have caused them problems. Yeah. So that was a nice thing to be. Although sometimes I remember sitting down once at like Newquay Orchard, which is a great place by the way, and then people use that, but one of the caseworkers came out and started working with me, and I'm like, no, I'm the caseworker, the guy over there with the nice trainers on's actually the homeless guy. I just thought he was being nice to me. He's like, do you know what service is worth? What's your name? And I was like, well, this is very structured. But yeah, it was, I think, you want to be relatable in some way as well to people. I tell you what, one thing as well, I think is a national issue, and not just for homeless people, but for young people in general, but it really affects homeless people, is how expensive driving lessons are.
Oh yes.
It's impossible. And they can't. It's like, I want to work. They want to work, but they can't get to where they need to get to. They've finally got somewhere, like a house somewhere, and you know, they're finally starting to settle down and nest properly in their area. And they've found work that they could do and that they're willing to do, but they just can't. You know, you can't get from Falmouth to Bodmin on public transport every day. Drive you insane. You wouldn't be able to do it. Amount of cancellations of buses and things as well. So. It'd be a massive thing. We either need to improve the rail network or get people get cheaper driving lessons somewhere. I genuinely think driving lessons, because it's such a big part of life, it should be looked at in the same way the NHS does. It should be paid for by taxpayers. It helps so many. It's like 50 quid a blooming hour now. It's crazy.
I think it was £20 when I did mine.
Yeah, mine was as well.
A few years ago.
But mine weren't that long ago. I mean, mine was only just before COVID.
He's trying to get a test in now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you can't do it.
You can't even freaking get a test.
Yeah. Also, so I don't know where's it? Bodmin here, isn't it?
Yeah, Bodmin.
I did mine in Leicester, and it was quite clever because Leicester had some of the lowest pass rates in the country, because just where it is, it's next to this horrible roundabout, but just outside Melton Mowbray, which has got one of the highest pass rates in the country because there's no big roads anywhere by the time you get out. And I hit an absolute jackpot because I went from Melton Mowbray and I got like 4:30. It was when all the kids are coming out, so most of my time was in the queue. Yeah, it's amazing. I definitely shouldn't have passed, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, that's yeah. I can't remember what the question was, but yeah.
I was talking that much that I also didn't remember what the question was. One thing I am interested in knowing is, what would you like to see change in the future?
Like, in terms of homelessness and stuff?
Yeah, just in terms of everything, even like, I feel like mental health as well goes very hand in hand with homelessness, substance misuse. What's like something that could get changed, that could maybe improve new generations not having to experience homelessness?
It would be the taxing people to a good amount. Without wanting to get political here, I remember when we had, and I'm not picking any sides or anything here publicly, although if you come and see my show, you'll know where I am with things. But I remember we had Jeremy Corbyn's what was it called, manifesto, and one of his things there was increasing the tax that the wealthy paid, and it was said to be sending us back to the 60s, and you know, like, it was absolutely crazy, mad left-winger. But it was only at the same level that it was at when David Cameron was in charge. But there's such a pushback about the whole thing. Like, it's not taking a ridiculous loads of money off people, it's just getting people to pay fair amounts of tax. It was absolutely crazy that even when I was homeless, I was doing work, I was paying more tax than Google. It's insane. Like, we're seeing that there's no money there's money everywhere, but there's no money going into the right places, and that's the thing I'd like to see. Firstly, a lot of my work colleagues, I'm sure you have the same thing here, there's so much burnout because it's so few people having to do so much work, and you start running around in circles and find it hard to actually achieve anything, and it gets depressing and all that sort of stuff. But also, I worked with kids a lot as well in the past, and there was a thing where, I'm not saying if you're homeless it's a lost cause by any stretch, but it becomes a lot easier to be able to help like change someone's life when they're younger. And I was working for a large secondary school in Newquay that's not Trithias, so it's the other one.
I didn't go to that one, you're good.
Yeah, okay. But they were lovely, it was real nice, but I was getting paid $8,500 a year, and I was there all the time, because that is pro rata minimum wage with some holidays and all half terms and everything taken off. So I was there from 8:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon, dealing with all of the autistic kids, which was hard work, and I was putting all my effort in, but I had to move to Pentref. I got headhunted and moved over to Pentref because I just couldn't afford to do that. And it's crazy that I had someone there who really cared about these kids, and I was doing loads of stuff with them. We had one kid who was so anxious, but he was really good drawing, so I taught him how to use an animation program on the Mac, and we got him drawing him talking to his anxiety, and he created his anxiety as this rock with moss on it that he was kind of holding, and you could tell by the picture, you could read loads into it, why you're holding it. It's almost like you're trying to keep it because you're familiar with it. Why has it got moss on it? It feels like it's been there a long time. There's all that, you know, we did some really fascinating things. We recorded little podcasts and short stories with a load of kids and stuff, and you know, I had some of the kids, we played chess, because I remember my granddad taught me 3 things that were really important: why it's important to be nice, why it's fun to learn new stuff, and how to play chess. I think those are if you're going to teach 3 things, those are the 3 things you should teach. But and it gave a good moment for us to be able to talk, and there was loads of improvements in these kids, but I couldn't stay. So you then look down the line and start, why have we got these adults with a load of problems? Because the people who care about them and want to help them, they can't do it. It's being literally blocked. So it's literally financial. We could talk about all these other things, but we need more social housing, and we need better schools and hospitals and mental health provision. It took me so long to get help, I became the help. Like, that was the easiest way of actually ending up doing it. You know, I was literally there at a train station trying to kill myself, and I got fined, which leads to the punchline cost of living in my show. But it's it's just, and that police officer probably wasn't a bastard. He might have been. He shouldn't be dealing with these people. Like, it's a mental health issue. Yeah. And we're so badly funded.
It's kind of like a vicious circle.
Yeah, and it's just, of course it's going to end up this way. Of course that's going to happen. You know, and it's just getting worse and worse. Like, I'm seeing it's getting worse and worse, and it's not going to fix itself until we get better funding. It's just not going to happen. Again, we can create as many apps and things as we want, But if people need houses, they need houses. Like, that's it at the end of the day. Like, you can't expect... And the other thing, I remember having this conversation with people, and this might be a little bit rough, like, but I fully believe it. One of the problems with giving a prediction is the fact that life on a whole is generally quite shit for a lot of people. Like, if you've got an addiction, and there is ways around it doesn't have to be like this, but on the surface of it, if you've got an addiction, a lot of the time that's covering up like childhood trauma or something that's been there for years. And if you've got a 30 year drink habit, you know, or heroin habit or something, me coming in and trying to get you to join chess club, you know, will help in a certain way, you know. And if we find purpose for them, we can do things like that. And there is ways of doing things, but it's a long journey and there's a lot of tough stuff to do. But the prize at the end of it, when someone's gone through that, yeah, they see their prize at the end of it as a mouldy flat in red roof that they can't afford and a 0-hour job at the co-op with no holidays or anything ahead of them. Like, no wonder sometimes they choose to, you know, stay in their position that they're in, you know. And because a lot of these decisions are made by people, you know, I'm sitting on there telling people this, and they're well-meaning, but I'm on Zoom with them, and they're sitting in their nice little garden in Surrey, and it's like, you're not going to relate to this. Like, how are you making the funding decisions here? You know, like, we need good housing for everyone. There needs to be good housing for everyone. There needs to be good prospects for people. Job improvement needs to move forward, and we're going backwards, like, politically. There's conversations in the US about taking away abortion rights and stuff. It's like ridiculous. This is like taking things back to the 50s, you know, trying to break down unions and stuff. And it's like, people need to have a voice and be able to be heard. Otherwise, they'll just be on self-destruct. Why wouldn't it be on self-destruct? If the planet's if the world's trying to do that to you, you're just going to end up joining in. So yeah, it's not an easy answer, but we need better money, and people like the working classes, I would say, yeah, need to kind of unionise and speak up about things and be heard.
Yeah, I think it literally all falls down then to having the houses that they need, whether it is social would be better, because obviously private rented is not affordable.
So expensive,
like it's so, and it's at least with social, after that 1 year they have obviously they get the tenancy for life, so it's that security. I forgot where I was going with this.
Yeah, but the thing is as
so
well.
Sorry.
But the thing is as well, because of that whole like meritocracy, that idea that we get things that we earn, you end up with people in public then arguing if someone gets a house. Like, what have they done to deserve that? It's like, been born. They've been born. Like, they deserve to have somewhere to stay. Like, this whole idea of like dangling a job over people, and they have to be doing this. Like, they're not in a good situation. When I wrote that opinion piece for the article, it was about how the economy is meant to be there to be able to protect people, not people be there to protect the economy. And my whole point was that COVID was showing that it was the other way around. Opposite my house, there was a Londis, 24-hour Londis, and there was two old Asian men that worked in there, Monty and Razak. They were like in their 60s. They were lovely guys, but they were in the hotspot of Europe for COVID, and they were in the worst demographic. People with darker skin, older gentlemen with darker skin, were dying at a much faster rate. We know that's a lot of that is now down to the respiratory issues that happen when you have vitamin D deficiency, which is what happens with darker skin in the Northern Hemisphere. But at that point, they knew that they were in that wrong situation, but they were having to go to work in a 24-hour shop at night time, and their choice at that point then is go to work and possibly die, or don't go to work and be homeless. And that's not what the economy's there for. The economy, that's all for trying to make someone a bit of money while selling amber leaf and a cheese and onion pasty. Like, it's not, do you know what I mean? They're not nurses. Like, allow them to be off for a bit. But we end up with all this, like, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? It's the wrong idea socially. You should never look at someone else's plate to make sure that you've got enough. You should look at someone else's plate to make sure they've got enough. Then if everyone does that, we'd be in a far better situation. We've got the whole thing is set up because the whole thing's set up in a terrible way. Like, it doesn't work. Like, there's questions that can't be answered. I remember going out and talking to people that have been, you know, county lines is a terrible thing. It's an awful thing. But how on earth am I meant to talk to someone that's been homeless for 14 years, all of a sudden they're part of county lines and they've got a house? Okay, it's cuckoos and it's a horrible situation. But I say to them, you can't do that, and they're in the house all of a sudden. This might want to be edited out this next week, but they're in the house all of a sudden. You know, and then I say to them, but what happens if you get caught? They say, well, the police will put me inside. So no matter what happens, they're now sheltered. So we're in a situation there where, from their perspective, and you can fully see why, we're at a dead end because drug dealers have got a better offer to them than the government have. So how on earth are you going to win that argument?
Yeah.
The government needs to step their game up. It's not down to anyone else. And, you know, we can talk about all these things, but we're all spinning plates waiting for someone to do something, and they ain't doing it. So there basically needs to be kick-off.
Riots.
Yeah, there needs to be people saying stuff. I'm a massive fan of unionisation. This round here is the rail union. I found it on the floor, but I'm a big fan of unionisation. You don't get anything done on your own, especially if you're homeless. You haven't got any sort of voice, but people need to kind of come together and let their voice be known. There needs to be discussions about all these things. You know, and we're so busy, it's so hard. Like it's crazy. You know, I said I worked for, you know, a very similar company to this, but we don't get time to communicate even within ourselves because it's just absolute havoc. Yeah, it's just absolute havoc all the time, and you know, and panic. Like you're with people that are in mad panics and stuff. Like because we're so pressured, there's no way of actually structuring something, and I think the only way of doing stuff is to basically come together. There needs to be a unionisation of the sector, I reckon. And people actually demanding stuff, not just for themselves, but for the people that we work for.
Do you think there needs to be more support in place for people who finally have these tendencies and then are at risk of losing it? Because obviously when people are at risk of losing their tendency, they're going to be going back in the same position and having to do that whole journey again. Do you think there needs to be more support, more funding, not even funding, maybe just more support and around to move these people on and set them up for success rather than move them on from the streets into accommodation with nothing and then being like, well, figure it out now?
Yeah, there needs to be, there's 2 points really. The first one is, I remember we were really, really busy and we got to a point where we couldn't work. We had so many people. We had to make a decision, and I piped up and I said, right, I think that we need to make a distinction, which wasn't made, and it isn't in the funding, is are you homeless because you've got mental health issues, or have you got mental health issues because you're homeless?
Yeah.
If you've got mental health issues because you're homeless, we can help that because we can, you know, try and get you to a point where we solve the mental health issues and make you not homeless, and then all of a sudden, well, not solve them, but, you know, help you get on the way. If you're homeless because you've got mental health, the other way around. We can't find you a house, but we can help your head. Yeah. So, you know, there was that distinction there, and so many resources were going towards helping people. It's just like, of course they're in a bad mood, of course they're upset and depressed, of course they're anxious, you know, and because they haven't got a house, and unless someone helps us get a house for them, they're going to remain doing that. All we can do is medicate them to help them not feel the feelings that they should be feeling, which, you know, it helps them because they don't want to be depressed or anything. You know, it's not good being like that, but we're ignoring the fact that why they're depressed is like, we need to get them out. There isn't anything. Again, they're living in a village, likely looking around with loads of empty houses, and they start thinking, oh, it must be my fault because your reward is based on your efforts. And, you know, they've ended up there and I haven't. So there's that end of things. And then the other end of things is when people finally do get into places, you know, we need to be more understanding of stuff. They've got all of their friends at this point are people that have been on the street, and, you know, they're all upset, and, you know, they've got nothing. All of a sudden you get someone with a house and you have all of these, you know, oh, they have people over all the time. Well, of course they have. Their friends are outside. Like their friends are outside. Like, what are you meant to be doing? You know, they need a bit of an understanding of things. You know, like, of course this is going to happen. They're in a new world, and it's a hard world, it's a difficult one, you know, being able to, there's panic and worry and anxiety about losing all these things. You look at people who've won the lottery, do you know what percentage of people put weight on who've won the lottery?
How much?
100%. They've all put weight on, and it's because when you have something, you become, you know, it's quite stressful, you know, how do I do this, how do I deal with this and juggle it, especially if something instant like that. And getting a house for a homeless person is very similar to winning the lottery. All of a sudden I've got this thing, but now I've got something to lose.
You've got to think their whole life kind of changes overnight.
Yeah, and they've probably lost one before. It becomes a terrible situation for them. Like, it's really panic-inducing, really worrying, you know. So I think there needs help in that regard. Something I do like the idea of, but I don't think it's executed amazingly all the time. But, you know, not because of the fault of people getting the funding thing, is the huts,
Pods.
Yeah.
Yeah, RSAT pods.
Yeah, so those are great. Like they really help. But again, you know, you end up with short term, and you end up with sometimes, you know, we had a few people sometimes who go, I'm going towards pods, and we try and steer them away, but people that have just got over addictions and stuff maybe sometimes. But only at certain periods, you know, you have it the same everywhere. But you know, they're great. They're really good. I used to work in the Truro one a lot, and they're a massive help because I think that it just breaks that step up. It's not all of a sudden, right, you've got a whole house to do and all this.
You get the independence of having your own front door, having your own house, but also you've got staff on site, so if you want support with something, you know you've got someone to go to and ask those questions.
Yeah, and it was a massive help. And people around you that understood you and stuff, you know, that was a massive thing. So things like that I think help a lot. Like I think if I had somehow moved into a house rather than a caravan, I think I'd still be in trouble. But I managed to find somewhere that I had space and time, and all individuals, aren't we? You know, all got different needs. But yeah, I think that nesting thing. Wasn't there something within it? I don't know if it was Harbour Housing or Cornwall Housing. There was a job called. They worked with people doing nesting. They called it. I remember there was a girl. I was about to say her name, but I don't know if you're allowed to on these. But she's a good one. She's nice. She's lovely. But she did nesting for a bit. So they'd go in and help them paint and help them with, you know, paying their first bills and things like that.
We do outreach support, so any of our clients that move into a tenancy from our support accommodation, they get 3 to 6 month outreach support, so they're just not kind of thrown in. So then we help with setting up all their bills, doing all their direct debits, making sure they've got kind of like a safety net around them, and then if they do need further support, we then have to just sign them on to obviously the relevant agencies. I can do it, but we find doing the outreach support, I mean, I worked on our AFIA project for a little while, and we do work with people coming out of prison, getting them to a tenancy and private rented, and just having that 12 months tenancy support has made such a difference because they know that they've got that person on their phone that they can call if they've got something happening. And half the time they don't even need support, they just need someone to talk to and just be like, oh, actually, I just need to talk this through with you so I haven't just made it 10 times worse in my own head. And half the time you just need to listen, and that's all really.
And it's again a misunderstanding from the people in the public as well a lot. Like, I know we had one guy who was fascinated because when I first went to see him, he had a list as big as my arm of all these violent crimes and things. When I went to see him, he said he was gonna steal something to go back into prison. He was gonna steal like some meat to go into prison and give it to some other homeless people. I said, firstly, think about it. No, none of your mates got ovens, so don't worry about meat. Like, and secondly, I said that's interesting. That's given me a nugget of hope here. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, all your other stuff's violent. Why are you not doing a violent thing at the moment? Like, what's changed here?" And it was really interesting having spoken to him because the reason his violence was always against guys that had done something to women, and unfortunately that's quite prevalent obviously in terms of places like on the street or in certain communities and things. And he'd grown up seeing his dad, you know, attack his mum and stuff, and they had this trauma, this trigger. But if you look at things on the surface, this is a man with huge anger problems, whereas what he was actually doing in his head was the only way he could see how to react, which was, you know, fighting, how to solve problems and stuff, but trying to help people out and things. But he had this kind of big anger thing in him. He had all this anger. We worked on it. I'm not speaking to him now, I'm not working, but when I left, he was housed and doing voluntary work, and everything was improving, and he was like going to get involved with our projects and stuff. But he would be misunderstood a lot of the time because he'd ring up and sometimes like he'd be going to pay a bill or whatever, and there'd be, you know how it's frustrating sometimes, you're on the phone for ages and then the person on the other end just being a bit of a dick. And he'd lose his mind a little bit. But what they don't realise, and then, hang up, what they don't realise is in his mind, if this doesn't get paid, he's going to be homeless again.
Yeah.
Like, there's all of this sort of stuff going on. And not that they should be rude to anyone on the phone, you know, the person on the phone has a right to this, but there's so much misunderstanding of all of this and where the anger and stuff comes from, and it's all so much misplaced anger and stuff. But yeah, he was a fascinating guy, really. There's a thing I saw, they had a thing called Psychopath Night on Channel 4 a few years ago, and there was a really fascinating thing on there. psychopathy is people who don't feel emotion and empathy for other people. That's generally what a psychopath is. And there was this guy on there, and he found out that he was adopted, and he found out that he was a psychopath at like 50 odd. He told his family, and his family were like, well, yeah. Like, he thought they'd be a surprise, but he's never shown any,
Any signs of it, yeah.
No, he's never shown any like proper love in the same way that people do. He loves people in a different way. Like, he's not emotional with it. He's very logical with, well, they need this, so I'll get them that. Really. But he was, he found out that his dad was a psychopath as well. He passed the psychopath test, and his real dad was in prison for murdering his mum. And his granddad, he hadn't done the psychopath test, but he was in prison for abusing people. His great granddad, and it could be hereditary. And he had the same mind, basically, but he got adopted out, so he wasn't around that when he was younger. And he's a lecturer at Harvard. So you have this ability in your head to be able to, he had this predetermined thing, which is, I don't necessarily feel empathy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you have that, but if you then mix that in with having seen when you're growing up people whose ways of getting out of tricky situations is lashing out, and that's how you deal with stuff, those two things mixed together cause an issue. Whereas as soon as he was adopted out to a family and he was brought up in a different way, and has this different, they have a different approach to dealing with their issues, he turns into this lecturer, this very successful man. So people need to start realising that, a lot of what's going on is a reaction to past traumas. We know all of that, but I don't think people realise just how much it is, just how much of this. That guy there, at my work, he'll laugh if he hears this, because I'm not calling him a psychopath, but I have done once, but like as a joke. But again, he's seen as someone really furious, really angry, but what he's trying to do is save his mum when he's doing these things by helping out and trying to save other people, not understanding what's going on. And again, all of this can be not solved necessarily, but made so much easier with mental health support. It shouldn't take me turning up without any shoes on and fag in my mouth, going, oh, it's interesting you're stealing meat. Like, luckily I found that little nub and we worked out from there. Without that, thrown on the pile. And when you're as busy as we are in this industry, I don't think this happens all the time, but it's a subconscious thing. Sometimes you look down and you're like, oh, because there's such a, you see people with, oh, this is going to be a big one, this is going to be hard. So sometimes, there's a tendency, sometimes I think, from some individuals to not give people too much of a chance because they haven't got the time themselves, the energy themselves. I'm going on now, but yeah, I can't remember what the question was, but yeah, that's all that stuff's true still. So.
Oh, perfect. Is there anything you would like to say before we finish it?
KevMud.com, look at my gigs on there. And everyone should be nice to each other and things. And yeah, don't judge people, basically. Just and if you reach out and help someone, it helps both of you. He who chops the wood warms himself twice. That's an old proverb I remember hearing. If you're helping people and want to reach out and give people purpose, you'll find purpose yourself as well. So yeah, that's probably that. And also, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. It's been very insightful and funny.
No, thanks. Yeah, and listen to the next episode.
There you go, got the outro done. Even better.
If you want to be our next guest or know someone who might be interested, please feel free to contact our Weave team at 07597 059 444 and join us next time at Harbour. Trebanessa!